Imagine this, you're driving through a leafy suburb in North Austin. You pass a stunning modern farmhouse, with a black and white exterior, a pristine Tesla in the driveway, and a backyard that looks like a five-star resort. The couple living there, let's call them Sarah and Jason, bring in a combined $450,000 a year. To any outsider, they've made it. They are the American dream personified. But, if you walked into their kitchen tonight, you wouldn't see a celebration. You'd see Sarah staring at a $4,500 repair estimate for their central AC unit, with tears in her eyes, because they don't have the cash. This isn't just a bad week, it's a terrifying reality for millions of Americans who earn more in a month than most people do in a year. We are living through a strange economic paradox in 2025. We've been told our whole lives that income is the cure for financial stress. We think, if we just hit six figures, the anxiety disappears. If we cross $200,000, we're set. If we hit $500,000, money becomes irrelevant. But, the data tells a story that is both shocking and counterintuitive. According to a 2025 Goldman Sachs report, 41% of Americans earning between $300,000 and $500,000 are living paycheck to paycheck. Let that sink in. 4 out of 10 people making $500,000 a year have no financial cushion. They are high-income earners on paper, but in reality, they are trapped in a high-income poverty trap. The trap doesn't care about your job title or how many degrees are on your wall. It only cares about one thing, how much you keep. We often assume that these people just can't do math. But they are often the smartest people in the room: doctors, corporate lawyers, tech executives. They understand compound interest and 401k projections, yet they are spending more than 95% of their income on what they've labeled as necessities. In fact, research shows that someone earning $100,000 is actually more likely to feel the burn of living paycheck to paycheck than someone earning $50,000. How does this happen? It starts with a silent thief called lifestyle inflation. It's the most gradual, invisible process in the world. Think about your first job out of college. You probably lived in a cramped apartment with 2 roommates, ate $2 tacos, and were thrilled when you could afford a new pair of sneakers. But as the promotions came, the inadequate apartment became a luxury condo with a guest room no one ever uses. That $15 quick lunch became a $25 sit-down meal, with a cold-pressed juice. The reliable Honda was traded for a leased BMW, or a high-end SUV because, well, you earned it. Each individual upgrade feels completely reasonable in the moment, but these upgrades compound, while your savings stay flat. The danger is that once a luxury becomes part of your routine, it stops feeling like a luxury. It becomes your new normal. And once you're at that level, downgrading doesn't just feel like a financial choice, it feels like a personal failure, or a social embarrassment. This leads us to the fixed cost trap. When you're making $80,000, your housing is limited by what a landlord will approve. But when you make $350,000, you qualify for a mortgage that stretches you just as thin, but with much scarier numbers. A family in a high-cost area like Northern Virginia or San Diego might spend $8,000 a month on their mortgage alone. Throw in private school tuitions, which feel mandatory in certain social circles, multiple car payments, and country club memberships. Suddenly, that massive salary is gone before the month even hits the halfway mark. These aren't just rich people problems. They are lifestyle commitments that function like a prison. Selling the house feels like a public admission that you're failing. Pulling the kids out of the private academy feels like you're robbing them of their future. So, you stay in the trap. You keep running on what researchers call the hedonic treadmill. The goalposts are constantly moving. In a 2025 Charles Schwab survey, Americans said they need $2.3 million to be wealthy, and nearly $840,000 just to feel comfortable. But here is the kicker: as soon as you reach $500,000, the definition of comfortable jumps to $1 million. You are constantly running, just to stay in place. And 63% of people say it takes even more money to feel wealthy this year than it did last year. Now, let's talk about the great American credit illusion. You might think credit card debt is a struggle for the lower class. But the top 20% of earners actually hold 35% of all U.S. credit card debt. While lower-income families use credit to survive, financing groceries or rent, high-income households use it to maintain. They are financing a lifestyle that technically fits their income on a good month, but leaves absolutely zero margin for error. Total U.S. credit card debt has hit a staggering $1.277 trillion, the highest since tracking began in 1999. For the six-figure earner, debt is becoming chronic rather than temporary. Over 36% of people earning $100,000 or more are carrying a balance month to month. They aren't paying it off, they are just managing the interest. This brings up a massive question that many people ask: isn't it just impossible to live in expensive cities like New York or San Francisco without spending this much? It's true that geography plays a role. In San Francisco, residents say you need $4.4 million to be wealthy. In Manhattan, a $350,000 income can genuinely feel tight, because taxes and baseline costs consume everything. You are essentially earning a coastal salary, just to pay coastal prices, which cancels out your advantage. But even in these cities, the difference between the wealthy and the rich is stark. The most successful people in America, the actual millionaires, rarely look like the people we see on Instagram. The classic Millionaire Next Door, a study, and 2025 research from Empower show that 94% of millionaires still live in middle-class or modest neighborhoods. They drive older cars and rarely spend more than $400 on a single piece of clothing. Take Warren Buffett, one of the richest men on earth. He still lives in the same house he bought in 1958 for about $31,000. These are the prodigious accumulators of wealth, or PAWs. Compare them to the under-accumulators of wealth, or UAWs, the high earners who spend everything. There is a famous formula to check where you stand: multiply your age by your pre-tax annual income and divide by 10. If you're 40 years old and making $200,000, your net worth should be around $800,000. If you're way below that, you're an under-accumulator. You're not building wealth, you're just renting a high-end lifestyle. So, what is missing from this conversation? Why don't we hear about the sandwich generation pressure? Those high earners who are simultaneously paying for their kids' Ivy League dreams and their aging parents' assisted living. And what about the crushing weight of student loans for doctors and lawyers that often consume thousands of dollars a month before they even pay for a loaf of bread? These are the critical gaps in the data that suggest the trap might be even deeper than it looks. But there is a way out. It's not about deprivation, it's about intention. Most people in this trap never consciously chose their spending habits, they just let them accumulate, like dust. Breaking free requires an uncomfortable audit. Is that $200 a month gym membership actually giving you value, or is it just a status symbol? Do you really need the extra 1,500 square feet of house that you only use for storage? The math of the escape is simple. If you earn $300,000 and save 30%, you're putting away $90,000 a year. In 20 years, at a 7% return, that's $4 million. But if you only save 5%, the typical high earner rate, you end up with just $650,000. That $3.35 million difference is the literal cost of the high-income poverty trap. The evidence is overwhelming. Income alone does not solve financial problems. Only intentional choices create security. We have to stop optimizing for lifestyle and start optimizing for wealth, which is really just another word for options. We've talked about the prison, the invisible bars of a $500,000 salary, and the crushing weight of a lifestyle that eats its own tail. But to truly understand why this happens, we have to look at the fixed cost trap. This is where the math of the American dream starts to turn toxic. Imagine a guy named Marcus. Marcus is a senior VP at a tech firm in New Jersey, pulling in $300,000. When Marcus was making $80,000, his world was smaller. If things got tight, he could move to a cheaper apartment or cook at home. But now, Marcus is locked in. He has an $8,000 monthly mortgage on a house that looked like a trophy, but now feels like an anchor. He has 2 luxury SUVs on lease because clients expect it. He has private school tuitions for his 2 kids that feel as mandatory as oxygen. Marcus isn't spending money on fun anymore. He's spending it on commitments. And this is the terrifying reality the sources highlight at $300,000. Your expenses aren't just larger, they are less flexible. You can't just cancel a private school in the middle of a semester. You can't just walk away from a jumbo mortgage without destroying your credit. This is why high earners feel just as suffocated as someone making $50,000. The numbers are bigger, the house is nicer, but the lack of breathing room is exactly the same. Marcus has expensive problems, but he has 0 options. And then there's the credit paradox that no one likes to discuss at dinner parties. We have this image of credit card debt being a poor person's problem. But the data from 2025 shows us something elite and disturbing. The top 20% of earners in the US now hold 35% of the total credit card debt. Why? Because when you're a high earner, you don't use credit to survive, you use it to maintain. When that $4,500 AC repair we mentioned earlier hits, or when the country club dues come through on a month, the high earner reaches for the plastic. They aren't worried about the interest today, they assume next month's bonus will cover it. But as the sources point out, 36% of people making over 6 figures are now carrying that balance month to month. Debt is no longer a temporary bridge for them, it's becoming a permanent lifestyle. Total U.S. credit card debt has soared to $1.277 trillion, and a huge chunk of that is sitting in the pockets of people who look like they have it all. But let's pause for a second and ask the questions that keep these people awake at 2 a.m. One of the most common things people ask is, how much is actually enough? If you ask the average person on the street in Manhattan or San Francisco, they'll tell you that you need at least $4.4 million to even be considered wealthy. But even if you hit that number, the goalposts move. The Charles Schwab survey shows that Americans now think they need $839,000 just to be comfortable. The problem isn't the number, it's the hedonic treadmill. As soon as you reach the level of the $800,000 net worth, you look up and see the $2 million person. The definition of enough is always just one promotion away. This leads to a massive gap in how we think about wealth. We see a doctor in Chicago driving a leased BMW and we think, wealth. But the sources tell us about the plumber who drives a 10-year-old truck and has $2 million in low-cost index funds. Who is actually richer? The doctor has that income, but the plumber has this wealth. This is the distinction between a prodigious accumulator of wealth, PAW, and an underaccumulator of wealth, UAW. If you want to know where you stand, use the formula from the sources. Take your age, multiply it by your pre-tax annual income, and divide by 10. If you're 50 years old making $250,000, you should have a net worth of $1.25 million. Most high earners fail this test miserably. They aren't building wealth, they are just highly paid consumers. Now, I have to be honest with you. As a research assistant, I noticed some things the data doesn't tell us. This is what we call the critical gaps. For example, the sources don't talk about the crushing weight of taxes. If you make $500,000 in a state like California or New York, almost half of that is gone before you even see it. The sources also don't mention the student loan ghost. Many of these struggling high earners are doctors or lawyers who started their careers $300,000 in debt. They are playing a game of catch-up that the data doesn't fully capture. And let's not forget the sandwich generation pressure. the high earners who are quietly paying for their parents' assisted living, while also trying to fund their kids' college. The trap is often more than just buying too many lattes. It's a web of social and family obligations that the sources don't fully detail. So, how do you break the cycle? How do you stop being a UAW and become a PAW? The solution in the sources is selective frugality. It sounds boring, but it's the secret of the self-made millionaires, 79% of whom received zero inheritance. These people pay themselves first. They don't save what's left over after spending, they spend what's left over after saving. They automate at least 15% to 30% of their income into investments before a single dollar goes to a mortgage or a car lease. Let's look at the $1 million math. If you earn $300,000 and you're caught in the trap, maybe you save 5%. After 20 years at a 7% return, you have about $650,000. That sounds okay, right? But if you chose intentionality instead of a lifestyle and you saved 30% of that same income, you'd have over $4 million. That's a $3.35 million difference. That is the literal price of the high-income poverty trap. That is the cost of the leased BMW, the guest rooms no one uses, and the DoorDash orders that add up to $2,000 a year. Breaking the trap requires an uncomfortable audit. It means looking at your life and asking, what is this spending actually for? Does that $200 a month premium gym membership actually make you healthier, or does it just make you feel like you belong to a certain class? Is the private school a necessity for your child's soul, or is it a status symbol for your ego? The sources tell us that actual millionaires, the ones who stay millionaires, shop for deals, drive older cars, and rarely spend more than $400 on a suit. They understand that every dollar spent on a depreciating asset is a dollar that isn't working for them. In the end, the evidence is overwhelming. More money was never the answer. If you can't manage $50,000, you will drown at $500,000. The trap isn't a lack of income, it's a lack of intention. Wealth isn't about what you buy, it's about the options you have. It's about the ability to walk away from a job you hate, or to handle a $5,000 emergency without a panic attack. The doctor in Chicago, the tech VP in New Jersey, they don't need a raise. They need a mirror. They need to realize that the American dream isn't about looking rich, it's about being free. And freedom only comes when you stop optimizing for your neighbor's approval and start optimizing for your future self. The goal isn't to be the person with the most expensive house on the block. The goal is to be the person who owns their time, their peace of mind, and their future. Because at the end of the day, a golden cage is still a cage. And it's time to unlock the door.